What's up, everybody? New episode of the What's Your Why podcast is out now. This episode is with my uncle, Keith Turner. He grew up in Cleveland, tells his story about how he came up in youth sports but always had the passion of making it to the NFL. You learn about how that story goes and how his path ended up going throughout the podcast. But then ultimately we see and we hear how he ends up in northern Minnesota, married to my aunt, and then how his life mission kind of changes from being dedicated to making it to the NFL all the way to being solely focused on giving back to others, empowering other people's lives to make a positive difference in their lives. So I think you guys will enjoy this podcast. It's one of my favorite ones so far. Give it a listen. Check it out. And if you like it, share it. Thank you. Give yourself like a brief intro of who you are, and then we'll go like way back. Way back in your life.
Holy smokes. All right. Good morning. My name is Keith Turner, and I am currently the activities director at Hibbing High School and reside at Side Lake, Minnesota.
All right. Well, everybody listening, Keith is my uncle. But wanted him to come on, basically kind of tell his story, and then we'll hear what his why is throughout the podcast, and then ultimately kind of go through his life a little bit. So, Keith, where are you from?
Originally from Cleveland, Ohio. Grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and then migrated to Louisiana for a year, and then ultimately came to Minnesota and been here ever since. Got here in 1984.
Okay. So you're from Cleveland. What was life in Cleveland like growing up, early years?
Early years. So a buddy of mine and I, we always said we never knew we were poor until we left Cleveland or got out of the state. So growing up, it was good. Life was good. All you did was hang out, play sports, and do stupid stuff. So you never knew that the things you didn't have because you didn't have them.
Yeah.
So
you grew up playing sports. Were you like in elementary school playing all kinds of sports? Or I know you're definitely a football guy, but
elementary school. So our public school system didn't have a lot of organized sports in elementary and junior high. So we did a lot of things, that were like organized outside. Mm-hmm. As far as like, I guess you would call it Bantam football, kind of like what they do with hockey. So we would have a neighborhood team. There would be coaches. Then they would provide equipment. And then so each neighborhood had a team. So we were the Mount Pleasant All-Stars, and you had to go up and try out and for football. And the same thing with baseball. Not a lot of traveling basketball. But I didn't play any baseball. I truly didn't like baseball because it was so slow. So football was always a thing that we did in the street, in the park, on the playground at elementary school. So that was just like a stable, no matter what time of year it was.
Gotcha.
So.
And then, so you grew up playing sports with your friends, sounds like, in the local neighborhood. Is that what all sports were like? Was just the local teams, Mount Pleasant?
Yeah, so it was truly, the weird thing, and this might be a lot of people don't remember this. So you went to your local high school, your local junior high, but then right in the mid-'70s, they started what they call busing. Mm-hmm. So if you were in the lottery and you got picked, you would end up going to a school that was probably like an hour and a half away from your neighborhood. So they broke up. The premise behind it was we were going to get a better education. Some of the other schools, but they were poor schools too. But they were trying to do is integrate, because my neighborhood was all black. Then they were integrating African-American students, Hispanic students over to the Caucasian neighborhoods, mm-hmm. which were primarily poor too. They did the same thing. So it wasn't like we were getting anything better. We were getting the same education, but there was a lot of strife in that. So during that time when you were playing your neighborhood sports, there would be coaches that would come in from these Catholic schools and they would recruit you. So in my neighborhood, there was 3 kids that were going to Cleveland Central Catholic. There was another kid that was going to St. Ben's, but I gravitated to a guy that I grew up with, and actually he came up this summer, Ricardo Brown, who was 3 years older than me, took me down to Central Catholic, and ultimately that's where I went. So you got what they called an opportunity grant. Mm-hmm. An opportunity grant paid for your books, paid for your tuition, and your transportation. So you would get these tickets, bus tickets, mm-hmm. that you would give to I still think of those, and we used to sell those. So we'd have a little extra money, and then you'd figure out how to get to school. But anyway, ultimately, that's what you did. So then when you went to these Catholic schools to help offset your tuition, then you did CYO basketball on Saturday, mm-hmm. And help young kids work on their form and stuff like that. We would do different events where you would have to go and work, like they would have a fundraiser called Casino Night. Mm-hmm. So you'd go and work Casino Night, and all these people are winning money and you don't get any of it, so you go home pissed off. But anyway, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, that I had the opportunity to go to Cleveland Central Catholic and have such great mentors, and mm-hmm. my head coach, Mr. Jerry Fasco, still in contact with him. Anytime I get back to Ohio, we try to get together. Rest his soul, Mr. Giakowski, who was our assistant principal, who took me under his wing after my first day at Catholic school, and I almost got kicked out because I was sitting in art class and Sister Alberta asked us to be quiet, take out our materials, and I asked somebody for a pencil, and she slapped me over the back of the neck with a ruler, and I asked her what the hell she was doing. And that almost ended my yeah, almost ended my time at Catholic school.
How old were you when you moved over to the Catholic school?
I was 14.
Okay.
So I was going into 9th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it like, or when you were growing up, was it this shift between going from your local school to where they were busing you throughout the city, or is that kind of happening your whole?
Nope. So that happened primarily from my 7th grade year on. So mm-hmm. that was, and actually my youngest sister did get bused. So she went from going 15 minutes away to school to 2 hours away on a bus one way. Wow. To go to junior high, and then ultimately got to come back to go to high school right in our neighborhood. She went to JFK, so John F. Kennedy High School.
Was it very weird, like getting bused to all the different schools? I don't know how to say it beyond weird, but
so it was weird. It was weird because we were in our neighborhood, and I say this, we had some really good athletes, so we were all looking forward to being together in high school. Okay. And all we talked about was winning a state championship, and then we all went our separate ways because we got bused. Some of us went to Catholic school, and some of us stayed in public school. Mm-hmm. So I still remember Calvin Farmer was one gentleman, ended up going to St. Ignatius, and he was the only one that went there. He was the only African-American male on their football team. Because, again, most of the Catholic schools didn't have a lot of kids of color either. Mm-hmm. And then that migration started too, because we were the freshman class of 79.
Okay.
So at that time, still, there wasn't a lot of integration in Ohio.
Yeah. And was there a lot of, being it that I was 40 years ago, was there a lot of, just like hate coming from their students, or were you pretty welcomed coming into?
So it was weird. So going into the neighborhood that the Catholic school was in, we never could leave. So I'll give you 2 instances. We got off the bus one morning, and a gentleman rode by and pulled out. I still remember it was a pearl pistol handle silver pistol, and he's pointing it at us, telling us, calling us the N-word, telling us to get out of his neighborhood. One other instance, we're standing in the lobby of the high school, and a gentleman comes in and starts a fight with, and probably the worst thing he ever did, because that's when I was a freshman. One of the older football players took him down, and it was ugly. But so the school was never truly divided, because we all were there for one thing, and that was mostly to get educated and win.
Yeah.
I say that it was probably primarily because who we had as administrators. Father O'Connor wouldn't allow any of that, and it was a different time. You didn't question a lot of things. You just followed the rules.
Yeah.
And Mr. Giakowski was probably one of the most open-minded guys that you would ever have. And then Coach Fasco, it was just, he never treated us any differently than he treated any of the other players. It was just, it didn't matter how good you were or how bad you were. If you screwed up, you had consequences.
Yeah.
If you did things well, then you were rewarded. So
Okay.
the other thing that I had, and I don't know if it was illegal or not, another gentleman, I had a lot of guys that helped me through my journey, and Mr. Kowalski would always come up, and we would call it handshake money. He would always give us 30, 40, 50 bucks after a game and just say, stay out of trouble. And it was just to make sure that you had money to go buy a burger or take your girlfriend to the movies. It was never money like to go buy shoes or anything like that. It was, and fortunately, he did a lot of things for me. He paid for my prom. He paid for, and it was, I'm still in contact with his son, because his son and I came in together.
Okay.
And his name was Keith too, but I was probably 5'9", 230, and Kiki, as they called him, was probably 5'8", 120 when we came in as freshmen. Yeah, we walked in the freshman locker room, me and another guy, and they were asking if we were coaches. So that was how small most of the guys were when we went there as freshmen. So, but it was
Yeah. So if you're 5'9", you said 230. Were you lifting before you came there? Or was this just
no? We were
from
lifting.
playing sports, or
We were lifting. My oldest cousin, who also lived with us. So my aunt and her 5 kids live with us. We all grew up in the same house, and I still say to this day, Kenny Turner, my cousin, was the best athlete in our family. We still talk about times that when he played Little League football that nobody could even stop him. He'd just do things that were amazing, but he just couldn't stay out of trouble. But he always had us lifting weights. He had us doing stuff, and it was, if you remember those old plastic weights with cement in them.
yeah, I've seen them before, but yeah.
That's what we had. We had those, and then he would put rocks in milk crates, and you would do things just, so we were lifting before lifting was popular.
There you go.
Know, and then if he babysat us and we did something stupid, we would have to hold like these 25-pounders and stand there, and if we dropped them, he would punch us in the chest. So yeah, things like that. You think back, you go, wow.
Different times.
Yeah, it was a little different.
If your babysitter punches you in the chest now, I don't know how that would fly.
No, that probably wouldn't go over well. But most of the time it was probably well-deserved, because we were probably doing something stupid that we weren't supposed to be doing.
So you're going through, it sounded like you grew up, you wanted to win a state championship with your team in your younger years, but coming into the Catholic school, was that a goal you had there still, or is that what their goal was?
Yep, our goals there too were the same thing. So most of the guys there ultimately wanted to go play college football, but wanted to win a state championship. So our freshman year, we went undefeated. Our sophomore year, we had a group of junior seniors that were awful. All they wanted to do is smoke weed, drink, and some of them were on some pretty hard narcotics. They were snorting cocaine. So yeah, that group that year, my sophomore year, I ended up starting at nose guard and fullback, and I think we lost 3 games, and that was the worst in probably like 5 years the season they had ever had. And you would think that the world was going to end. But after that group of seniors left, we dedicated ourselves, us that junior class and that senior class, that we would never do that again. And in some ways it did happen that way, because we ended up our junior year, we ended up like 9-1, and then lost in the first round of the playoffs. And then my senior year, we probably had the best team that I had ever played on, but our quarterback seemed to think that it was okay to smoke a few joints before the first round of the playoffs and have a few drinks. And he still played well, but he didn't play. Yeah, you could just tell things were off. And I'm not blaming anybody, but I just think that we would have, because eventually the team we lost to walked through the rest of the playoffs, Lake Catholic. Wow. So they ended up, I don't even think they had a close game. We lost to them 10-7. On a freaking field goal. But yeah, you think about that, like you said, that's 30 something years ago, and that still is etched in my mind. I still remember that field goal, because we scored first. Yeah. And then they kicked a field goal, and then they scored a touchdown late and beat us 10-7. But again, they were a great team too. They had the Sullivan brothers, who both started for Ohio State. Their quarterback started at West Virginia for 3 years. So it wasn't like they were
they weren't bad by any means.
No, they weren't a bad team. So, and we had our quarterback eventually went on to Oklahoma and drank himself out of school. And then we had a couple other guys go on. Our free safety went to Notre Dame. So, yeah, so we were pretty good too.
Yeah, those are some good players for sure then.
Yeah.
You mentioned that, like, the goal is sports coming into high school. What were you also looking for a good education? What was your mindset back then? I know not a lot of kids are super focused.
Yeah, my true mindset was at that time there was you didn't really need to have a lot of good grades or an ACT score. So my mindset was stay healthy, play 4 years of college football, and go to the NFL and make some money, and then retire. That was my true mindset. Okay. So we had 3 or 4 guys from our neighborhood that were playing in the NFL, and if you could imagine guys coming back, I still remember the one gentleman that played for the Jets came back, and he was in an all-black Mercedes-Benz with the tinted windows, and I was like, one day I'm going to be driving in our neighborhood with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it didn't happen. But that was our mindset, is that we were, no matter what, we were going to the NFL, and that's where we were going to make our money. We weren't going to work 9-to-5 jobs. So.
Well, you graduated high school, I would assume after that football season. Yeah. But what was next?
So what was next is something that came into play that spring. It's called Proposition 48. So you needed to have a 2.0 and a certain score on your ACT. So I was recruited by Tennessee, Penn State, Ohio State, but at that time I couldn't get in because my GPA, my GPA was like a 1.89, and when I went to take the ACT, I just colored in the lines. I didn't even read the questions because I just knew that I was going to get into, because at that time Johnny Majors had already called and offered me a scholarship at Tennessee, and my mother said, yeah, that'd be a good spot for you. And I had 2 friends that were playing there at that time.
Okay.
And they said, yeah, this is a good spot for you. They take really good care of you. And I didn't get in. The other school that I really wanted to go to was Penn State, because everybody was recruiting me to play defensive line.
Okay.
They were gonna bulk me up to probably, I think, 260, 270.
Yeah.
And I was gonna play nose guard because I was a 2-time all-state defensive lineman, and then all-state fullback. So
what would you have wanted to play? Nose guard or?
I would have played nose guard. I would have played anywhere that they put me because I just loved to hit people, and I didn't mind getting hit. I know that sounds weird, but
No.
it never bothered me to get hit. So when guys would hit me and they'd get up and they'd be pumping their chest, and I'd be like, "That's odd. You didn't even really hit me that hard." But I all right, because I was never a rah guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that really bothered people that I didn't get excited. I guess I just always thought, hey, this is what we do. We just do it this way. Why you got to get excited about it? So,
So you ultimately, so you didn't get into one of the schools you wanted to right away. Where did you go after?
So I ended up at Grambling. So I had Mr. Peoples came from Louisiana, and he sat down with us, and he said the historical black colleges have a variance. You can get in. You can get into a HBCU, and there's no problem with your grades. So I got into Grambling, and that year I was down there. If I looking back, if I would have just stayed and waited my turn, as they say, I would have been okay. But coming out, I thought, I've started for 3 years. I've played both ways. I never came off the field, and then to go to not playing, just practicing was, So that's why I think I was fortunate enough to help Jackson with that.
Okay.
Understanding that mindset that you have to be mentally tough your first freshman year.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that are just as good as you.
Yeah.
If not better.
At your hometown, you're the best, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of hometowns, so
Yes. Yep.
makes
So
sense.
You get on the bus and go whatever it took, probably 18, 19 hours on the Greyhound bus to Louisiana. And, I passed a lot of all-state kids.
Yeah, for sure.
So
So what was school like there for you? Were you, at this point, you didn't get into other schools because grades weren't what you wanted, but were you more focused on grades when you got down there?
No, I still was focused on I just need to play these 4 years. I just need to stay eligible. And again, I got down there, and I didn't understand the importance of education. Like I said, I stayed down there a year, and then I left, and I came back to Ohio. And my high school coach said, hey, you need to do something, because what I was thinking is I was going to give up and not go to college. So then he said, hey, I got a friend up at Ely, Minnesota. And I was like, where the heck is that at? And I ended up in Ely at Vermilion and played 2 years there. And truly the thing that probably changed my whole mindset was an English teacher named Mrs. Sarah Marsnick. And Mrs. Marsnick, one day, I was coming out of the cafeteria, and if you've ever been to Vermilion, it's truly the campus is one building, And she always wore heels, and I heard this click, 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 click. Turner, Mr. Turner. And I was like, oh, shit. Because I had missed class.
Yeah.
And she turned to me, and she must have been 4'11". And even with her heels on, and she looks up at me, and she goes, when are you going to stop letting people take advantage of you? And I go, what are you talking about? I go, I got everything I need. No, you're going to need an education. And if you don't get the class and you don't get a degree, you're not going to be doing anything. And for some reason, that just stuck with that day. She said that, and she was just like pissed. And I was like, wow. And then her daughter was in the same class with me, and I still remember her daughter. And I said, why does your mom like me? And she goes, she does like you. That's why she wants you to come to class and get your degree. And from that time on, then I took everything a little more seriously as far as school. And I ended up getting my AA. And then I eventually went down to Superior, UWS. I was recruited by UMD, and then NDSU when they were Division II to play football. And I just really liked the guy from UWS, even though there was no scholarship involved.
Yeah.
He was Coach Krieger. He had just come back from coaching in the USFL. He had coached in the NFL. He had coached at Northern Michigan and won a national championship. And he just, I don't know, something with him struck that I was just like, I'm going to go there. I'm going to have a good time, finish up, get a degree. And that's where I went.
Yeah. So you did play football at
Yep.
UWS. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so you're more focused on schooling. What did you finish schooling with when you were at UWS?
So my degree is in elementary education.
Okay.
And I have a Phi-Ed and a health minor. Okay. And then I went on, and after I graduated, so I never taught. I just went right back. I went back to Vermilion, and I was like a grad assistant there. So I worked under Coach Jack Gebauer, who actually, when I was at UWS, he was the defensive coordinator and our wrestling coach.
Okay.
And he goes, "Hey, Turner, I need a heavyweight." And I said, Coach Gebauer, if you give me free meals and let me do work study for you, I'll wrestle for you. And I had never wrestled in my life.
Yeah.
And he goes, "All right, I'm going to teach you 2 moves." And I said, well, how hard can this be? It's just like a street fight. So he taught me how to do a bear hug and a trip, and I went to nationals twice.
So you played, how much football did you play at UWS?
2 years.
2 years.
And I wrestled 2 years.
You wrestled 2 years.
Yeah.
So that was your 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And so this is in Ely, right?
No, this was in Superior, Wisconsin.
Superior. Okay.
Yep. So I went from Ely, Minnesota to Superior, which most people know it's only like 2 hours away.
Okay.
2 hours south of Ely. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then that's where I met your aunt. I
Yeah.
met your aunt. She was at UMD getting her teaching degree.
So how'd you meet? Were you guys partying or?
No, so when I was in Ely, I went to Chisholm with one of the guys that was from Chisholm.
Yeah.
And I met your aunt there at Choppy's. And then we met again at, it was called the Brass Phoenix. And it was ladies' night, so ladies could get drinks for 15 cents.
Yeah.
And I had like $2. And I said, "Hey, I'll buy you drinks all night." And we just kind of hit it because we hadn't met before.
Yeah.
And so I was a big spender. Come on.
Yeah. 15-cent drink sounds pretty nice.
Yeah. So, but guys couldn't get them, so you had to give. Here's $1. Get us 2 drinks.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So
Definitely would have been nicer on Eve's 21st if that was the price of drinks. But okay, so you guys meet, and what was next after meeting in Duluth area?
So we dated for a long time. So your aunt finished up. I had some stuff to finish up, but I didn't. And then we went to California, and she was teaching out there. I was working at Sears. And then after a year, I came back to Minnesota. I finished up my degree, but we ended up at Vermilion.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was going to be like, we'd be there for like 3 or 4 years and then move on. And it ended up being 16. So I ended up eventually being the head coach there.
Yeah.
I was on the school board. I was really immersed in the community. And then we had 3 kids. We ended up having Claudia, then Jackson, and then Eve was later. And we just felt like we should do something different. And then that's when I went over to UWSP, Stevens Point, Wisconsin. And I was the offensive coordinator there for 4 years. And we won 2 conference championships, and we're in the playoffs. And that was where, because the kids were always with me no matter what I coached, because we didn't have money really for daycare. So they were, if I coached football, they were at football practice. If I coached basketball, they were at basketball. They were at track. So they were always in the gym. I laugh because Claudia and Jackson learned how to keep book for basketball because they was always there. And one day we'd meet people and they just showed them how to do it, and they did it. So
There you go.
which is weird.
I've never heard about California. What was your goal moving down to California?
So Jeannie got a teaching job out there, and I said, what the heck?
Yeah.
Let's go to California.
Sounds warmer. Sounds nicer.
It was nicer. It was really expensive though.
For sure.
We lived with another couple in a 2-bedroom apartment because
Okay.
it was so expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoyed it out there. Probably would have stayed, but I don't know. I think Jeannie got a little homesick, and I was a little homesick because
Mm-hmm.
it's another world. It feels like you're so far away, especially
Yeah.
when you're from the Midwest.
Yeah.
The strangest thing for me was Monday Night Football came on at 6:00.
Oh yeah.
So that was weird. You still be driving home from work.
Yeah.
It's kickoff.
So, moving back, at this point, did this area feel like home to you? You're still fairly
No.
young, so
Yeah. So no, eventually I always thought we'd move to Ohio or somewhere like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seemed like we just kept gravitating, staying in Minnesota. So
Yeah.
now, Minnesota is home. So
Yeah.
I still go back to Ohio here and there because my mom is alive and my sisters are all there. So, but yeah, Minnesota is pretty much home.
Okay. And then, so you move into Stevens Point, and what was Stevens Point? What was your role there? What were you doing there?
So I was teaching at the university. I was teaching classes for elementary majors who were going into Phi Ed.
Okay.
And then, so I had those. Then I was the offensive coordinator, so I had a recruiting area, and then called the plays for the football team. And that was probably one of the best experiences for our kids, and because it was just such a diverse area.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like it's not very big, but you get to Stevens Point, and the high school had so Claudia's average graduating class was going to be like 700.
Oh wow.
Jackson was in 700s, and Eve was right there in the 600 to 700 graduating class. So
It's a very big school.
yeah, but the town wasn't very big. So Stevens Point itself was about 30,000 people, but you had all these outlying areas. So
And it's probably just one school.
it was just one. Well, it was one high school, and then they had a Catholic high school that kids went to, but wasn't very big, Pacelli. But Stevens Point, because it was SPASH, Stevens Point Area High School.
Okay.
And again, we're around a lot of like-minded people. Jackson gravitated to a bunch of kids who played. Well, one is playing in the NBA right now. Other kids played at Wisconsin. A lot of Division I, a lot of kids that played Division I. Another kid wrestled at Ohio State, and now is pursuing a goal to wrestle in the Olympics. So it was a lot of like-minded people again we were around, and then things just happened. Ended up your grandma and grandpa got sick and kind of wanted to move back closer, so we ended up moving to Esco.
Yeah.
And I took a job at Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College, which is a tribal school, and I ended up being the head football coach, dean of students, and the AD. So
Big
doing
role.
doing multiple things.
So you grew up, and you talked a little bit about how when Jackson was a freshman, you wanted to you helped him with the mindset of how to still work through that first year. But you didn't talk, but what were things that you took from your life back in Cleveland growing up in your early years, both like finding sport as something you're passionate about and you really like, but also just like raising your kids? What were things that you were very intentional that you wanted to bring to Jackson, Eve, and Claudia?
So all three of them, the one thing I really wanted to get across to them was education.
Yeah.
To make sure, because I always said this to them, and hopefully they remembered it. The best players are the smartest players.
Mm-hmm.
So all of our kids did something with music. They were in the band, or they took music lessons. They took dance lessons. So being a well-rounded person and then being really open-minded when it came to accepting people and first taking people at face value and letting them prove themselves before you pass judgment. But the biggest thing is making sure that you get your education. So one of the things I'm most proud of, they all graduated on the A or B honor roll out of high school. Claudia has a degree. Jackson has 2 degrees, and Eve will have her degree coming up in May, and then she's going to go to law school. So I couldn't ask for anything better. And I think having your auntie Jeannie as my partner, that really helped because she knew the value of education. Because my mother never graduated from high school. My mother went to work after my grandmother passed away and helped raise her sisters and brothers. So she worked, and she really pressed on us, me and my sisters, that we needed not to go to college, but to graduate from high school. So we all graduated from high school.
Yeah. And so when you were growing up, was it more the mindset of just get by and graduate? Okay.
Yeah, just get by. What do you need that for? Because if you're not playing sports, then you can go work at the post office. You can go work at Chevy, or the canning place. You're always going to go, or you go down and work at Republic Steel and press steel for the rest of your life for 25, 30 years. Then they give you a watch and you go into the sunset. So that was your mindset, because you were always figuring you would find a job in some kind of industry. So
Gotcha. And that's what Cleveland was known for at the time. Okay.
Yeah. So if you the iron, which is really weird for me. So all the iron ore that leaves here a lot of it goes to Cleveland.
Oh, really?
So where I went to high school, we were the ironmen, but probably less than a mile away is U.S. Steel. And we'd always drive past there, and there was a fire coming out of the thing, because that's how they melted the steel and molded the steel. And you'd be like, oh, the fire, look at that fire, when you're a little kid.
Yeah.
That building is not even burning down, but there's fire coming out of it. But so that was where you would go. You were going to go and work at Republic Steel, or like I said, Ford or Chevy, and make parts, or go work at the post office. If you were a decent student, you could take I can't even say it, civil servants test to be a postal worker.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
And now those postal workers are just getting destroyed.
Oh yeah, that's not a good gig anymore.
No, the delivery drivers have insane jobs. Yeah. But okay, so they all seem to be doing well for themselves, which is awesome, and it seems like the value of education sunk in for all of them. But they're all athletes. Like growing up, we're athletes. Do you think them just being around you as a coach, or do you think that was something they found on their own?
I think a lot of it, we never forced them to play anything or do anything like that. So I think a lot of it was just the joy of playing, and I probably the most competitive kid is Claudia, because she would do whatever she needed to do to make sure she won and help her team win. Jackson is really competitive, but sometimes I think he could have took it or left it. And Eve is probably our nicest kid, and she's just like, I'm never doing that. I wouldn't do that. If somebody fouled her hard, she doesn't go back and foul them hard. Whereas Claudia would be like, okay, I'm going to get you, and you just don't know when I'm going to get you. Yeah. So, and I don't know. I think it was just they liked doing it, and they liked seeing our teams that played, because, again, there wasn't a time when we were in Stevens Point. I was lucky our head coach would let the kids ride the bus with us, and Jeannie, no matter where we went, unless when we went out of state to Florida and Texas, they didn't come. But
Mm-hmm.
if we were in Illinois, if we were in Indiana, they were there. So
That's cool.
They were at every game.
I'm sure they're the team's biggest fans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they were at practice. I'd say that one of the probably the biggest things that coaching Division III was. I remember Jackson saying, "I'm going to be a businessman like Jake Swank," because Jake and I forget the other kid's name. They ended up being actuaries, and when they graduated from Stevens Point, and they were businessmen.
Yeah.
So, and I think I equate some of that to because your mindset is who you're around, and if you're around successful people and people that want to educate their minds, then that's where you want to go. That's what you want to do. So
The people you surround yourself is kind of like who you become,
yes,
who you surround yourself with.
That couldn't be more of a truer statement.
Yeah.
If you're around idiots, then more than likely you're going to be an idiot.
Mm-hmm. So growing up in Cleveland, obviously a big city, what was the difference like moving to small town Ely?
So probably the biggest difference for me was the quiet. I
Yeah.
always tell people, and to this day, I still have to have the TV on. Because there was always noise when we were growing up. There was always like commotion, no matter what time of night it was, and things always closed so early. That was the strangest thing. But now I'm kind of used to the laid back, quiet, and you plan ahead. So you go to the grocery store or you get stuff so you have it in the house because nothing's going to be open.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And now the world seems so small because of cell phones but
For sure.
before you were going, you probably don't know what this is, but you'd go to the payphone and call collect, and they wouldn't accept your collect call because they knew you'd be okay. So you just go collect from Keith Turner, and my mother go, okay, nope, I don't want to take that call, and she would just know that I was fine.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was So there was no email, there was no computers, there was no texting.
It's fascinating that you don't want to. You just call and get denied. Just be like, okay, they're okay.
Yeah, because you didn't want to pay the $5 whatever dollars that would be on her phone bill.
It's a long distance call too.
Yeah, there would be a long distance call, collect from, and so you did things. It's weird. I think back now, and I always said too, my mother wanted me to have better than her, and we never wanted for anything. Our clothes, we always had what we needed for clothes, shoes, and to be able to get what we needed educational wise. And I always wanted a little bit better for our kids, and I think we're getting there because they're going to have their degrees, they're going to be self-sufficient, and that's all you can ask for.
Yeah.
If you can be self-sufficient.
So, you're teaching in universities. You were back in the day. Did you ever get a master's degree or anything like that?
Yeah, so I have a master's in education.
Okay.
And we did that. And again, without your auntie, Jeannie, I don't know if I would have been able to do that because we had 3 kids.
Yeah.
And I was coaching football. And the way I did it, we did it on the weekends. We did it every other weekend. We had a cohort, so we would drive to Virginia, stay there Saturday, Sunday, and then we did all of our work online, remotely. And then the first year you went down and because I got it from Southwest State in Marshall, Minnesota.
Okay.
We'd go, the first year we went down and we observed the people that were graduating that were ahead of us. And then we had to finish up our second year, and that was all while I was still coaching football.
How old were you, or when was this?
So we had all 3 of our kids.
Okay.
Wow, that was 2000 something. I can't remember back, but everybody was born, and that probably the proudest moment was all 3 of them got to see me get my diploma, my master's degree.
That's cool.
because when I graduated from UWS, I didn't even go to the graduation.
Yeah.
I was just like, it's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted them to see that how important that was to see me walk across the stage and get
It's a big deal.
degree. It was.
Yeah.
You know, because there's not a lot of people that get their masters.
Mm-hmm.
So
No, it was I didn't walk at Ohio State when I got my master's, but it's because it was just crazy in the middle of COVID, and so it was a lot of procedures to go through to do it, and I was like, I'm just gonna not.
But you think about that. You graduated from Ohio State
That's pretty
with
cool.
a master's degree.
Yeah.
I know. I'm still truly a Buckeye fan.
Yeah.
And I didn't attend there. I ultimately, if I had to go back, I would do everything I needed to do so I would have attended Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Just to say that I was a Buckeye.
Buckeye.
But you're a Buckeye alum.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in front of royalty.
I don't know about that.
You don't know how big that is.
It is cool, and it's cool to see the grandness of the campus. I love campuses.
Yeah.
Even like NDSU's campus is nothing crazy, but there's something about being on a college campus that is, and this could be taken the wrong way for some people, but it seems like it's a very high, distinguished area, but there's so much value placed on education there, and that's something I value a lot is education. So I think it's cool to be around campuses, be on campuses.
It is. It's a different feel when you're, and a lot of times there's still crap that goes on there too. But there's a different feel when you're amongst your peers and they're striving for the same thing.
Yeah,
it is. I enjoyed the UWS campus.
Mm-hmm.
I was excited when Claudia went to Bethel because it was a different feel. I was excited for Jackson at UND because again it was just like, wow, you're going to be an alumni from here. And the same thing for Eve when she went to CSS. She's going to graduate and she'll forever be a saint.
Yeah.
And you hear Jackson talk about the Kelly Green rolling through its veins. It is. I am proud to say that I'm a yellow jacket from UWS because again it just, I don't know, it's just a different feel to say that you're a college graduate.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I really emphasize with the guys that came to Vermilion who were pretty much the mindset I was at 18, 19.
Yeah.
That I don't care what you get out of this, the best thing for me is to watch you graduate and walk across the stage. And we had a lot of guys that went on and played 4-year college football and a couple that played in the NFL. But there's nothing better than to talk to, like, I think of Julian Roper. This is a guy that was all over the place, but he's a elementary principal in Michigan right now. And I think of Julian is in charge of a school and teachers.
What would your high school teachers and some of your early educators think of you in this role or in your previous roles as dean of students and whatnot?
I think Mr. Giakowski would say, I knew you were always going to do something like this. Probably some of my elementary teachers their jaws would drop.
Yeah.
Junior high, it could be 50-50 because junior high was crazy. We had people punching teachers. We had weapons in school. There was always something going on. We had kids throwing chairs out the window. So it was always a little chaos in our junior high.
Not a good learning environment.
No. Sometimes we had kids that should have been in high school at some point in time.
Okay.
They were still in 8th grade at like 16. And it's like, you might want to
figure something out. Yeah.
So,
Oof. That's wild.
It was. It was it was a different time though, and you just kind of rolled with the flow of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Crazy. Going back to Cleveland, when you do go visit, is it fun? Does it feel like home?
it always feels like home, but it's weird now because everybody's getting older.
Yeah.
I still so what's crazy for us, and I try to get across to our student athletes here. I still have like 40 guys that we text back and forth, and whenever we get back to Ohio, like they're all over the country, but we try to get back at similar times.
Mm-hmm.
So I call it now the Iron Man effect, because we got guys that say, "Yep, if I wouldn't have went to Central Catholic, I'd be dead. If I didn't do this at Central," and we have a lot of guys that. Last time I was back, I got together with Barron Turner, who is a year older than me, and John Malcolm. And both those guys are really successful. John lives in a penthouse that overlooks Lake Erie, and went to visit him, and I go, "John, when we were 16, 17, did you ever think you'd be living in a freaking penthouse? You can't even get into their apartment. It's gated. You have to go through this guard, and then once you get past the guard, you go in, and the doorman has to ring you up."
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm like, holy smokes, John. And then Barron lives out in some far suburb where he's got acres of land.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we all grew up the same way. So you would not imagine that, but everybody's doing well, and and it's the Ironman effect. Our coaches just, I don't know, it was something about that group of coaches and all of those guys. After we left, about 2 or 3 years after we left, a lot of them spread off and became head coaches, and were very successful.
So you obviously had some really good coaches in your high school years. Did you take a lot of what you learned from them into your coaching styles and your coaching strategies?
Yeah, I think some of my, especially from our head coach, Coach Jerry Fasco, he never really yelled a lot, and I never really yelled a lot. He yelled when he had to.
Yeah.
You knew when he was really pissed off at you, because he would yell, and you'd be like, okay, so it's serious. We need to get things together. Yeah, and then he was always very, very kind. No matter what. I can remember days I would come, I wouldn't have my tie, and he'd always make sure I had a tie so I didn't get in trouble. Or I would be in a lunchroom and I'd forget my lunch, or I wouldn't have any lunch money. He would make sure that I ate lunch. So I just remember those little things that, and when we talk today, we always give him praise, and he goes, stop, I didn't do it. I didn't do that. And you're like, Coach Fasco, you did.
Yeah. The big support, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, it was, and you would just, and then Coach Dick McPhee, who played for, at that time they were the Patriots. He played in the NFL, but he was an English teacher, and I still remember he goes, "You're going to have to be able to read and write if you're going to make it." And again, he would have us come in on the weekends, so you were up to speed and you're reading and you're writing. So, it was just guys like that. And then Coach Al Hadakovic played for Akron and then played for the Cleveland Browns for a little bit. And again, he was the same way. Coach Al was probably the crazy one, because he just yelled all the time.
Yeah.
And then he would pull you aside and go, "Yeah, you know why I'm on you, right?" And I go, "Yeah, I know why you're on me, because I'm not going as hard as I should be going."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You're better than everybody out here." But you would just listen to that, and you'd be like, "Yeah." But if they didn't do that, they would just be going through the motions. That's what really bothers me sometimes when I see some coaches that they're just collecting the paycheck. These guys, they could have been doing anything. Working, because I know they didn't get paid a lot to be teachers at this Catholic high school. they could have been working in the suburbs making probably 2 times the amount of money,
Yeah.
but they stayed and gave back.
So it sounds like they, like as teachers and as coaches, they gave, like extra.
Oh yeah.
Did you take that into your coaching and your teaching and your current role as AD?
Yep. You always have to give more than you've received, and that's just, I just honestly believe that if you're not, and you give people second chances, you know. But I've learned along the way too, though, you can't care more than the person that you're working with. If they truly don't care about being successful, you can't make them care about it. You can guide them and have them try to understand why you want them to be successful, but you can't care more than them. So
That's valuable, for sure. And it's very noble to have that mindset of trying to give back more. But, you know, you move back here to the Hibbing area, and you're working as AD here. Are you coaching at all here?
no coaching.
And do you miss it at all?
I do miss coaching. I don't miss game days. I miss
Yeah.
practice. That's the only thing I love practice.
Mm-hmm.
I love being around the young people and just having people want to get better.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing I miss. And then helping them reach their goals and their hopes and dreams. Because everybody has hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
And we started a leadership committee here, and everybody goes, well, you're going to get all, and it's like, I don't want all the students that are straight A students that are in 5 sports. I want some kids that may have a low GPA that may not be participating in everything. Because again, those are the kids that you need to gravitate and mix in with your great leaders, because they're great leaders too. They just might be leaders at different things.
Now, is that all sports, or is that
That's
across?
all sports. That's across the board. So we want to get anybody that's in an activity. You may be in drama, but you're not in any athletic events.
Yeah.
So you may be in the one-act play. Last spring, we did Shakespeare, and I had a speaking part. And the only reason I did it is not because I'm an actor or a thespian or well-spoken. I did it because I wanted those kids to understand, too, I value what they do as in the theater and how much practice they put in to get to perform 4 shows, you know. And you put in a lot of dang time. And then to let the drama teacher understand that it takes a lot to coordinate this and to get people to show up and to get people to remember their lines. And so it took, even Claudia and Jeannie were laughing at me because I was practicing my lines. And they'd be like, God, come on, Dad.
That's awesome.
You're too mechanical.
There's not a lot of people who would do something like that. That's
But you got to do things outside of your comfort zone. If you just stay in your comfort zone, what fun is that?
That's one of the big issues I saw growing up in Kindred. Is everybody was in their own bubble. Like if you were an athlete, you were sports and that was it. If you were in drama, you maybe did like the theater and maybe band and maybe speech. Or like I was in FFA, you only do FFA, but it always pained me because nobody else would go between all the things. Like I did everything from facts to FFA to sports, and there's so much more experiences out there than just doing the one things and things you can glean from that.
You do. So another, and I have a lot of cliches. If you're not uncomfortable, you'll never be comfortable. And that's to when I was at UWSP. So we won the conference, and when you won the conference in the WEAC, you have to go speak at the state conference of all the high school coaches attend at UW. And I told Coach Mish, I go, the last thing I want to do is go speak to these guys. I go, could we do small groups?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, this is what you got to do, Turner. And he had the Midwest accent. Yeah. Because the first time I met him, I said, hey, so I want to go to, you go down to those stop and go lights, you turn right. And I'm like, stop and go light? What the hell is a stop and go light? You mean a traffic light? But anyway, I did it, and I was nervous as hell. Mm-hmm. And I still, to this day, we do a lot of public speaking in my side business, mm-hmm. and I am never comfortable. I'm more comfortable talking one-on-one or in a smaller group, but I
agree with that for sure. Like the speaking I've done for FFA and whatnot, I much more prefer the small groups, but it takes a lot of energy to do the big groups.
Yeah.
Because you have to be like 150% if you want them at like 60 or 70.
And you have to be genuine.
Uh-huh.
So when we go and Carl and I speak, we always tell them it's not going to be the Keith and Carl show or the
mm-hmm.
Carl and Keith show where we're just going to talk at you. We're going to be interactive, and we want energy. We want you to be present.
Yeah.
And if you feel like you can't do that, step up, leave, and come back. Uh-huh. Because, again, a lot of people can't have that energy the whole time.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you're going to be up clapping and cheering, but
for sure.
You're going to be engaged.
What you talking about your speaking? So what is what do you guys do? What is your goal? I don't know a lot about your speaking.
So we do a lot of what we call leadership.
Yeah.
So we talk about conscious and unconscious bias. And we work with a lot of young people, and we want them to look at where they're at. So mm-hmm. one exercise we do is we start out with they introduce themselves, and then we give them time to go define an I am statement.
Okay.
So an I am statement. So for me, I'd go, I am a father, a husband, uh-huh. a mentor, and a servant. And when we first meet with those students, a lot of times they give their I am statement, and by the time we're done, because we do multiple things with different schools, mm-hmm. their I am statement will change about 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
Because then they realize that they're not just, because you'll get some athletes that just say, I am a football player.
Yep.
I am this, I am, and it's like, no, you're more than that. You don't understand that you're a brother, you're a sister, you're a nephew, you're mm-hmm. a son.
You're
so
a role model.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we try to get them to broaden their horizons and understand that we all have biases, mm-hmm. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. But to understand that sometimes we have to put our biases aside to make sure we're doing the right thing.
So when did you start doing the speaking?
So we started this, it's been about 14 years now. So truly we started because if you remember back when all these student athletes were getting assault charges, mm-hmm. Assaulting women. So we started out with young males, and our phrase was, we want you to get a degree, not a felony. And so we started talking about doing the right things, helping your teammates out. If you see them going down a path or doing something that you know that's not going to be good for them by the end of the night, mm-hmm. that you would step in. Not that you're going to stop them from doing it, but maybe you give them a chance to rethink it before they do it. So we started that way, talking to a lot of 2-year colleges, 4-year colleges, mm-hmm. and now we've moved into we're working with the Grand Rapids community on a welcoming community. So we're doing a lot of unconscious bias training, mm-hmm. and then we're doing some survey stuff for them over in those areas. We're working with several schools, and then we're moving towards, and actually Jackson has come aboard and he's helping us. We're moving towards doing a leadership mm-hmm. academy this summer for northern Minnesota. And that'll be a 2-day academy. And we're hoping to be able to invite 3 or 4 students from each school.
That's awesome. And so you're looking for how many students for that? Like how far out?
So we right now our dates are going to be, we want to start it. We want to do it after all the state tournaments are done.
Okay.
So it would be middle of June, late June, right, probably before the 4th of July. But
Yeah.
we're going to either do it at the Minnesota Discovery Center or
Oh,
over
cool.
at that new convention center hockey arena in Virginia. So
Okay.
those are our two venues.
That'd be cool.
So,
And then you're trying to get it to be pretty big.
yeah.
Okay.
So we had planned out. We were working with the Minnesota High School League, and they veered away from us. And I hate to say it this way, but they stole our idea. They're doing it right now in the metro area and some of the surrounding areas, and it's everything that we had given them to set our plan for.
Well, it's not going to be as big if they don't have the passion for it, and if they didn't come up with it.
I think they're doing a check the box.
Yeah.
And we weren't going to do a check the box. We're doing truly, this is what we want to do.
That's cool.
So
that's it's something that a lot of kids need. And where have you, like, throughout the years, you've been doing it for 14 years now, where have you traveled doing this with your partner?
So we've been in Wisconsin, and actually we're working with the Wisconsin High School League Commissioner Stephanie Hauser on looking at doing something for their area for the state of Wisconsin. We've been throughout the state of Minnesota, so we really haven't ventured further than Wisconsin, Minnesota.
Yeah.
We've had some opportunities to go to North Dakota and do some of those that just haven't come to fruition, though.
Yeah.
So, but
well, hopefully someday.
Yeah. So our hope is to be able to branch out and do this full time. So.
Well, it's definitely something that is needed throughout the whole country, especially like the original mission. It's something that I think any student that is in sports or any activity can benefit from, whether they're high school, college, elementary, but it's probably not your target audience. But
so we are. So now what we're doing, and I hate to give away all of our trade secrets.
Hey, you don't have to. You don't have to.
So we're working with high school students. Now we're having them become mentors, and we're going to bring in 5th and 6th graders.
Okay.
So they're gonna lead the charge with the 5th and 6th graders.
Yeah.
And then with those 5th and 6th graders, they're going to do similar things that we did with them, because what we want to do is have that culture. So one of our phrases is here in Hibbing, it would be the Blue Jacket way. In Cherry, it's the Tiger way. So we build these pillars of understanding what does it take to be a Blue Jacket, or what does it take to be. What does it take to understand to be a leader, to be in your community and in your school?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think it's a very noble thing. I know we've been going for like an hour and 15 minutes or something like that now.
That's fine. I just was getting a text from Eve.
Oh, no.
Yeah. No, they're fine.
But I think it's probably a good place to cut it off here. And maybe we could do another podcast in the future, kind of talking all about this and diving into this and why you started it originally and how you've gone through it.
No, that would be pretty cool. It'd be kind of cool to bring Carl on too.
Yeah.
I think you'd like him, because he's another guy that relocated. He's from Los Angeles.
Oh.
So,
and he lives in the area here?
Yeah. So he lives in Proctor.
Okay.
But he graduated from UWS too. He played basketball there, and I played football. That's where we connected, and then
maybe
we became friends.
Maybe after your event, after the 4th of July, we should do something.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
We could get together, and we could talk about, because truly what we're looking at is we're bringing in a bunch of my former players to talk about leadership. So a bunch of guys right now that are professionals and doing stuff in their area to come and talk about the different things that they're doing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. I look forward to hearing more about it.
All right.
But we can probably. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. I really enjoyed sitting down with Keith. It was one of my favorite listens so far. Or not listens, but episodes to record and interviews to conduct. If you enjoyed it, please share it, whether it's on social media or if you're just reviewing the podcast in the app. I think that'd be awesome. Be much appreciated. Look forward to some merch coming soon. And then I appreciate you guys coming back for more. Thank you.